look, if on the broader scheme of things, if I think the policies are wrong and we're headed for an economic crisis that are going to get blamed on the Republican Party, they're going to get blamed on capitalism.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. So this one genuinely caught my attention the moment I saw it. We have Peter Schiff, an economist who has been sounding the alarm on American financial policy for decades, sitting across from a passionate pro-Trump entrepreneur who believes this administration is doing exactly what the country needs, and what starts as a disagreement about credit card policy quickly turns into something much bigger. We are talking dollar collapse, empty shelves, trade deals, and a question that almost nobody in mainstream media is asking: what actually happens when the bill comes due? I want you to stay all the way through this one because the second half of this conversation is where things get really uncomfortable in the best possible way. The points Peter makes toward the end are the kind that sit with you long after the video ends. Before we get into it, drop a comment and let me know where in the world you are watching from right now. Seriously, I love seeing where this community is spread across the globe. All right, let's get into it.
And so when I see bad economic policy, and look at what the president is advocating. He wants to control credit card interest rates at 10%. When Harris talked about price controls on groceries, oh, she's a socialist. But Donald Trump wants to control the price of credit cards, and that's not socialism. And in fact, if you look at his industrial policy, I mean, he does not want the free market to allocate capital. He wants to pick the winners and losers himself. He wants to decide what companies and what industries should get capital, and then use the power of government to direct capital.
I don't know if that's fair on credit cards, because what the president did is he came out and floated that. And there was a lot of response, including here from us, that said, wait a minute, do you want to really get in and do that? But it was part of a broader narrative that he was on for that whole week about affordability, that we have to do some things for affordability for the American consumer.
Then cut government spending.
And then he backed down on the credit card stuff because he got feedback from Jamie Dimon and others like this. But guess what he forced? He forced a dialogue on the subject, and he forced a dialogue on accountability. Now, if you look at all the policies across, I'm a little shocked. I would love to hear you say, on safety and the border, I think he did a good job. My area of expertise is economics. I'm really not happy about it, and I've been very vocal about it. But it's like you got to be capable of giving the credit on something that's benefiting a lot of Americans, and safety at the border and murders are down. Those are facts. Those are not. Those aren't stats that are going to get revised.
But the affordability problem is a function of the big beautiful bill. I mean, the fact that Donald Trump signed on to a legislation.
Affordability started. I got to stop you. Affordability started by your own words. What happened after COVID when the Biden administration pumped all that money in there, and it created
that started under Trump. Trump signed on to all the COVID bailouts and all the stimulus. The Fed slashed interest rates.
It was quadrupled under Biden. You got to be fair with that.
The same thing would have happened under Trump. Had Trump won re-elected,
Biden was the president. It's not coulda, shoulda.
And that was
Biden was the president.
That was a lucky break for Trump, because now he could blame everything on Biden. Had Trump won, it would have been the same inflation. It was the same policies. Look at what they did with the big beautiful bill.
I don't know. I don't know why you can't balance credit with criticism on certain policies.
All they did was they cut taxes on tips, they cut taxes on overtime, cut tax on Social Security. These are highly inflationary tax cuts. They don't grow the economy. Government spending, meanwhile, increased. All of the Biden spending was preserved under Trump and increased.
It's funny.
They didn't cut. They had an opportunity to cut some of the Biden spending, and they didn't cut any of it. They increased it.
Yeah.
This is the moment where the mask comes completely off, because Peter Schiff is not some random commentator. This is a guy who has spent decades studying economic policy, and what he just laid out exposes something that a lot of people have been too afraid to say out loud. Think about this. When the opposing party proposed capping grocery prices, the response from the right was immediate: socialist, government overreach, un-American. That was the word being thrown around everywhere. Peter even pointed it out directly. He said when Harris talked about price controls on groceries, she's a socialist. But Donald Trump wants to control the price of credit cards, and that's not socialism. And here is what makes that so powerful. It is not just a political point. It is a consistency test. And the consistency test was failed in real time. You cannot build an entire political identity around free markets and then quietly look away when the same principle gets violated by your own side. That is not principle. That is preference dressed up as principle. But Peter does not stop there. He goes deeper. He talks about industrial policy, the idea that the government should pick which industries get capital and which ones do not, and you have to understand what that actually means. When a government decides where money flows in an economy, that is not capitalism. That has a different name, and Peter called it exactly what it is. Now the other guest tries to push back. He says the credit card thing was just a conversation starter, that it forced a dialogue. But here is what blew my mind. Peter had already anticipated that defense. Because the problem is not just the credit card proposal, the problem is the pattern, and Peter sealed that argument with one line that hit like a truck. He said that was a lucky break, because now we could blame everything on the previous administration, and nobody in that room had a clean answer to that.
So you know what's crazy? Like last week we had this guy on, Jared Moskovitz, who's a liberal. He's a Democrat. He's not a Trump guy. But you know what he was capable of doing? He was capable of saying, these are the things I like that he does. These are the things I'm fully against him. Okay? You lose credibility when it's like, nah, I can't give him credit here or there. For us, I sat there and I said, I don't know if I want to put the 10% credit card limit there, but I like the fact that he called Elizabeth Warren. And at least he's willing to reach to the other side of the aisle. And Elizabeth Warren's like, holy shit, he called me. What did he say? He asked me for advice. Really?
Well, I'm not going to give him credit for quoting a ridiculous proposal like government fixed price controls. But he doesn't understand why that's a bad thing.
First time in a long time that it's good that somebody is the Epstein files. What do we call it here? The biggest flipping fumble of this administration, biggest F up on what you did. We're comfortable saying that, but you lose credibility. It's like, no. Ask how many millions of people that live by the border are happy what the hell is going on when their kids are playing outside. Go ahead and ask how they feel. Go call the people that live in Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas, and San Diego and ask, how do you feel when the kids are playing outside today versus a year and a half ago, 2 years ago? Ask them. Ask the stories of people that were worried about what the hell is going to happen when my wife's going to work, when my mother's going to work. See what they tell you. Not everything is money. There's a bunch of different things that you got to do. See what it looks like when he walks at a World Economic Forum. Everybody stops and is watching this guy speaking, and Newsom goes up on stage, who's going to be the candidate that's going to be opposing him on the other side, tries to make fun of his own country that he's representing. Absolutely embarrassing for somebody to go out there and do that. So for me, on the highest stage, I'm proud that he's negotiating on our behalf. I don't ever give somebody a job as an executive when you hire, and I expect 100% of perfect decisions. I don't make 100% perfect decisions when somebody messes into my company, but you're trusting my instinct. And my instinct is if I have somebody in the boardroom that's going to sit there and negotiate on my behalf, I don't think there's anybody in America that would have done a better job of negotiating on our behalf than this guy.
What is he negotiating? What are you referring to?
What is he negotiating? What is he negotiating?
Yeah, what are you talking about?
You're not following what's going on. What do you mean? What is he negotiating?
No, you tell me.
What are people listening to and watching, and they're seeing others, under every single one, under every one of these guys.
Are you talking about trade deals that you think he's negotiating?
What? So you're saying you're saying Biden negotiated better? You're saying Obama negotiated better with Iran?
We don't need to negotiate.
You think Biden or Obama negotiated better with Venezuela?
No,
what do you think they negotiated? What did they do?
You're talking about trade deals. And
I'm not talking trade deals.
But the best thing to do is just eliminate our tariffs and bring them to zero. It doesn't matter what the rest of the world does. The best policy is free trade. Allow Americans to freely trade with anyone they want. There's nothing that needs to negotiate. But the speech that he made at the Economic Forum backfired. He went out there and claimed that the whole global economy only works because of America. That if it wasn't for America buying everything on credit that the world produces, that the world economy would collapse. As if, they would have nothing to do with all their factories if they weren't making the goods available to Americans. America does not drive the global economy. We're the caboose. We get pulled along. The power of the economy is production. It's the world can produce goods. It doesn't need us to consume those goods. They're perfectly capable of consuming their goods.
It doesn't need us to consume those goods?
No. Wow. Of course not.
This section is where Peter Schiff stops being polite and starts being precise. And precision, when you are arguing economics, is more devastating than volume. The other guest had been building this emotional case. He talked about negotiation. He talked about strength on the world stage. He kept saying, this administration is negotiating like nobody has before. And then Peter asked the question that stopped everything cold. He said, "What is he negotiating? What are you referring to?" And I need you to sit with that for a second, because that was not a rhetorical question. Peter genuinely wanted an answer, and what followed was the other guest scrambling, bringing up Venezuela, bringing up previous administrations, asking if Peter thought the last guys did better. That is a deflection. When someone cannot answer a direct question, they reframe the question, and that is exactly what happened. Here is what people do not realize about trade policy. The cleanest economic argument, the one that is held up across centuries of evidence, is that free trade benefits everyone. Not managed trade, not tariff negotiation, free trade. Peter made that point simply. He said the best policy is to eliminate tariffs entirely. Let Americans trade with whoever they want. There is nothing to negotiate. Now you might agree or disagree with that, but the point is that Peter came with an argument. The other guest came with a feeling, and then Peter landed what might be the most quotable line of the entire conversation. He said, "America does not drive the global economy. We're the caboose. We get pulled along." That is not pessimism. That is a structural observation. And the engine of the global economy is production, and for decades the production has been moving elsewhere. Peter was not attacking America. He was describing what has actually been happening and challenging the idea that one administration's swagger at a podium changes any of that.
Because
I'll give you 31 trillion reasons you're wrong.
By the way, I am so glad we invited you today on the podcast. And by the way, Rob, did we invite or did Peter say he's in town to be here?
Well, you invited me before.
And then you asked me to pay you for a private jet. I said, I'm not paying you for a private jet. I said, if you want to get down, you come down here.
By myself.
No problem. But I am so glad you're here today. I'm so glad you're here today. And the market gets to hear you because you still can't find yourself to give credit to what this guy's done.
Well,
the
look,
last year and whatever he's
No, it has nothing to do with, okay, is the stuff he's done on the border good or bad? The bigger macro stuff overshadows it. And when we end up with a total socialist Democrat in 2028 because of how horrible the economy is, whatever good things were done are going to be erased by that. I mean, the bigger picture is much broader than some of the things that he's done that are good. And I've given him credit along the way for things that I thought he was right. But the bigger picture stuff, the more important stuff is so wrong. And again, for you to misunderstand
what's above security?
What's
above security and safety? I'm sorry.
How safe are we going to be?
What is above safety and security? 12 to 15 million people came here last 4 years.
Yeah,
you don't live in America.
Yes,
no, wait a minute. You don't live in America to know what that feels like. You live in Puerto Rico. What borders comes to Puerto Rico?
Part of America.
No, but it's not the same as living under the border.
It's not El Paso.
You don't know what the border is.
What do you mean? We're a Spanish country.
What border do you have? What border do you have?
We're an island, but I mean,
the average person sat in America last 4 years saying, "What the hell is going on to crime?"
All right,
and you can't sit there and say what happened to crime. There is nothing we do if we're not safe. Nothing. The brain doesn't work if it's not safe. If I can't breathe, I don't think about how the stock market is doing. If I can't have oxygen right now, I don't say, "Hey, I'm about to die. Can you tell me what Bitcoin's at? Where's gold at?" Because I don't give a shit about oxygen. We're safe for the first time in many years. That's very important to the average American making $60,000, not to guys like us worth hundreds of millions of dollars. To us, we're going to be safe no matter what. For me, it's if the average guy doesn't feel safe, that's got a wife, husband, kids, that are willing to go out and play in a regular public park, what the hell does America look like? I mean, you got to give a little bit of credit what this guy's done for America be this safe. Well, this is what the average person looks at first.
It's not about
and
where
then comes everything else.
Look, if on the broader scheme of things, if I think the policies are wrong and we're headed for an economic crisis that are going to get blamed on the Republican Party, they're going to get blamed on capitalism, they're going to get blamed on everything that people believe that Trump stands for, but he doesn't. And the problems predate Trump. I mean, Trump was part of it when he was president during his first term, but we have been kicking the can down the road for multiple administrations of both parties. Everybody makes the problems worse, and everybody hopes that it doesn't collapse on their watch. Well, we're in very grave danger of it blowing up now under Trump's watch. And the things that he's done that are positive are going to disappear beneath that problem.
Why though? Why? So
because when you're looking at a massive collapse in the dollar,
Yeah.
and consumer prices soaring like we've never seen before in this country, when you're looking at widespread shortages and empty shelves and rolling blackouts because the dollar has collapsed and we can no longer afford to import all the goods that the rest of the world produces. And when there's an economic boom that's taking place outside the United States in the emerging markets because the world is no longer burdened with having to support the U.S. economy, when the world can now consume what it produces and invest its savings
no longer
domestically instead of loaning it up.
What Peter builds toward in this final stretch is not just an economic argument, it is a warning about a cycle that has been repeating itself for a very long time, and nobody in power has wanted to be the one holding the bag when it breaks. He said something that I think deserves to be repeated slowly. He said everybody makes the problems worse, and everybody hopes that it doesn't collapse on their watch. Think about what that means historically. This is not a new dynamic. Governments across history, from the Roman Empire's currency debasement to the British Empire's debt spiral after World War I, have repeatedly chosen short-term comfort over long-term structural repair. The pattern is almost identical every time. Spend beyond your means, hope the collapse comes later, and let the next person deal with it. And Peter is arguing that we are now at the point where later might be now, and this is where it gets genuinely uncomfortable, because he is not describing a political problem, he is describing a structural one. He talks about a massive collapse in the dollar, consumer prices soaring at levels this country has not seen, shortages, empty shelves, rolling blackouts. And here is the part that most people glossed over. He said there would be an economic boom happening outside the United States at the same time, because the rest of the world would no longer be carrying the weight of supporting an economy built on borrowed money. That is not a doom fantasy. That is a logical consequence of what happens when a reserve currency loses its status. And the countries that are not dependent on that currency, they would be free to invest their savings at home, to build, to grow, while the country that spent decades consuming instead of producing deals with the reality of what that actually cost. Peter is not saying this to scare anyone. He is saying it because the math does not lie, and the longer we celebrate small wins without addressing the structural problem underneath, the harder the landing becomes. So what do you guys think of this? Leave your thoughts down in the comments, please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.